Welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something that's kind of a hidden threat.
Hmm.
It's lurking in vineyards all over the world.
Wow.
And you might be surprised to learn that some of the biggest challenges that grape growers face come from
Oh, yeah.
creatures that are so small you can't even see them with the naked eye.
That's right. We're talking about the grape erinium mite,
Okay?
a tiny but tenacious pest that can have a really significant impact on grape production.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of these mites,
Yeah.
I want to quickly introduce Farminaut.
Okay.
This is a company that's using some pretty cutting-edge technology to help growers tackle these challenges.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, they use satellite imagery and AI to provide farmers with insights and tools to manage their crops.
Cool.
But we'll dive deeper into their technology a little bit later on.
Okay.
For now, let's get back to those microscopic troublemakers.
All right.
The erinium mites. Where do they even come from, and how do they wreak havoc on the vineyard?
Well, these mites have the scientific name Eriophyes vitis. Okay. And they're actually arachnids related to spiders and ticks.
Oh, wow.
They overwinter in the bud scales of grapevines, hiding out until spring arrives.
So they're already there lying in wait when the growing season begins. That's sneaky.
Exactly. As the buds start to open, the mites become active
Uh-huh.
and move to the young leaves to feed. That's when the real trouble starts.
Oh, boy.
They pierce the plant cells and suck out the sap, causing the leaf tissue to deform.
And that's what leads to those strange growths on the leaves, right?
Yes, those are called erinium galls. They're these fuzzy patches that develop on the underside of the leaves in response to the mite feeding.
Okay.
And you'll often see corresponding blister-like bulges on the upper surface of the leaf.
So those galls are a telltale sign that you've got an erinium mite problem.
They're definitely a red flag. But here's the tricky part. By the time those galls are visible, the infestation is often already quite advanced, and that's where early detection becomes crucial.
Okay. I'm starting to see where Farminaut's technology might come in handy here. But before we get to that, let's break down the impact of these erinium mites. What kind of damage are we talking about?
Well, it depends on the severity of the infestation. But in general, these mites can reduce vine vigor
Okay.
and stunt growth. They can also decrease fruit quality due to the stress they put on the plant. The vines become more susceptible to other pests and diseases.
Oh, no.
And for table grape growers,
Right.
the galls are a major aesthetic concern, making the grapes less marketable.
So it's not just about losing a few grapes here and there. These mites can have a ripple effect throughout the entire vineyard.
Absolutely. And that's why early detection and effective management are so important.
Which brings us back to monitoring those vineyards for signs of trouble. I imagine traditionally that meant a lot of time walking up and down the rows, carefully inspecting the vines.
You got it. Visual inspection has always been the primary method for detecting erinium mites. But it's time-consuming and can be quite challenging because the mites are so tiny.
Yeah.
You might need a hand lens or even a microscope to confirm their presence.
Wow.
And even then, it's easy to miss early signs of infestation.
So how do growers know where to look and when? It seems like finding these mites is like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Well, there's some strategic approaches. Growers often focus on inspecting young leaves,
Okay.
especially those near the base of the shoots, because that's where the mites tend to congregate.
Makes sense.
And they pay close attention to areas with a history of infestation.
Uh-huh.
As these mites often reinfest the same vines year after year, meticulous record keeping is really important.
It sounds like a lot of work even for an experienced grower. But this is where Farminaut steps in with a game-changing approach, right?
That's right. Instead of relying on the naked eye and handheld magnifiers, Farminaut harnesses the power of satellites to monitor vineyards from above.
Wow.
They use high-resolution imagery to detect subtle changes in plant health, often before any visible symptoms appear.
So it's like having a high-tech scout constantly monitoring the vineyard from space.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. Farminaut combines this satellite imagery with artificial intelligence to provide even more insightful analysis.
This sounds pretty revolutionary. Can you give us an example of how this technology actually works in practice?
Let's say there's a section of the vineyard that's starting to show signs of stress.
Okay.
The human eye might not pick up on those subtle changes yet, but Farminaut's system can analyze the spectral reflectance of the leaves, basically how they reflect different wavelengths of light, and detect those early warning signs.
So even before the leaves show any visible damage, Farminaut can see that something's not quite right. amazing.
And that's crucial for organic grape growers.
Yeah.
Because they need to act quickly and strategically to manage pests without relying on conventional chemical insecticides.
That's a perfect segue to our next topic. I know organic growers face unique challenges when it comes to managing erinium mites. Let's dive into that now.
Absolutely. While conventional growers can turn to synthetic miticides, organic growers have to rely on a different set of tools. It's all about taking a multifaceted approach that integrates various strategies.
I'm guessing cultural controls play a big role here. Could you elaborate on what those are?
Certainly, cultural controls are essentially practices that manipulate the vineyard environment to make it less favorable for erinium mites.
Okay.
One of the simplest and most effective techniques is pruning to improve air circulation within the canopy.
So it's like opening up the vineyard to let the breeze flow through, making it less stuffy and humid for those moisture-loving mites.
Precisely. Good air circulation helps reduce humidity, which can discourage mite population.
Yeah.
And it also allows sunlight to penetrate the canopy, creating a less hospitable environment for these pests.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
What are some other cultural controls that organic growers use?
Well, maintaining overall vine health is essential.
Sure.
Healthy, vigorous vines are better able to tolerate some mite pressure. So proper fertilization, irrigation, and disease management are all important parts of the equation.
It sounds like a holistic approach to vineyard management, focusing on building up the plant's natural defenses.
Exactly. And sometimes simply removing infested leaves or pruning out heavily infested canes can help to reduce mite populations, especially early in the season.
So it's a combination of prevention and early intervention, all aimed at keeping those mite numbers in check.
Precisely. But cultural controls alone aren't always enough.
Right.
That's why organic growers also turn to biological controls, which involve introducing or encouraging the natural enemies of erinium mites.
So it's like bringing in reinforcements, nature's own pest control squad to fight those mites. Tell me more about that.
It's exactly like that. We're enlisting the help of beneficial insects and mites that prey on erinium mites.
Okay.
Think of it as a delicate balancing act, promoting biodiversity in the vineyard to help keep pest populations under control naturally.
So instead of spraying chemicals, we're encouraging a thriving ecosystem within the vineyard.
That sounds fascinating.
What kind of beneficial creatures are we talking about?
There are a few key players.
Okay.
Predatory mites like Typhlodomus pyri are voracious predators of erinium mites.
Yeah.
They're like tiny wolves in sheep's clothing patrolling the leaves and gobbling up those pesky erinium mites.
I love that imagery, tiny wolves patrolling the vineyard nature is truly incredible. Are there other beneficial insects that grape growers rely on?
Absolutely. Ladybugs, lacewings, and even certain species of minute pirate bugs are all known to feed on erinium mites. They're attracted to vineyards that offer a diversity of habitats, including flowering plants and ground cover.
So it's not just about having grapevines, it's about creating a welcoming environment for these beneficial insects to thrive. It makes you realize how interconnected everything is in a vineyard ecosystem.
Precisely. And that's why many organic growers are moving away from monoculture practices and embracing more diverse plantings. They're incorporating hedgerows, cover crops, and insectary plants to attract and support these natural predators.
It's like building a little insectary paradise within the vineyard. But I imagine sometimes even with all those good guys on your side, you might need a little extra help. What about organic pesticides? Do those play a role in managing erinium mites?
Yes, there are a few organic options available,
Okay.
but it's important to use them judiciously and strategically. One of the most common is micronized sulfur.
I've heard of sulfur being used in vineyards. How does it work against erinium mites?
Micronized sulfur is a finely ground form of sulfur
Okay.
that disrupts the mite's life cycle. It basically interferes with their feeding and reproduction.
Gotcha.
But it's important to note that sulfur can also harm beneficial insects.
Oh, right.
So timing and application are critical.
So it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
You want to target the erinium mites without harming the beneficial insects that are helping you out. Are there any other organic pesticides that grape growers use?
Neem oil is another option.
Okay.
It's extracted from the seeds of the neem tree.
And it works by disrupting the mite's hormonal system, preventing them from molting and reproducing.
I've heard of neem oil being used for all sorts of pest control. It seems like a pretty versatile tool in the organic grower's arsenal.
It is. And there are also horticultural oils, which are essentially highly refined petroleum or vegetable oils. They work by smothering the mites or disrupting their cell membranes.
So it's like coating the mites in oil, making it impossible for them to breathe or function properly.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But again, it's important to use these oils carefully because they can also have negative impacts on beneficial insects.
It seems like organic pest management requires a deep understanding of the vineyard ecosystem and a willingness to adapt strategies based on the specific challenges you're facing.
You're absolutely right. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's all about observation, experimentation, and finding the right balance for your particular vineyard.
And I imagine that's where Pharmanaut's technology comes in handy, providing growers with the data and insights they need to make those informed decisions. Precisely, Pharmanaut doesn't just provide satellite imagery.
Right.
They also offer a sophisticated AI-powered advisory system called Jeevan.
Okay.
Jeevan analyzes all sorts of data, from satellite imagery and weather patterns to historical mite populations and treatment records to provide growers with personalized recommendations.
So it's like having a virtual viticulturist on call 24/7.
That's a great analogy. Jeevan can help growers optimize the timing of treatments, predict potential outbreaks based on environmental conditions, and even assess the effectiveness of different control methods. It's all about making data-driven decisions to maximize yields and minimize the impact of pests and diseases.
It's amazing how technology is being harnessed to support sustainable agriculture. And Trout's Lake Pharmanaut is at the forefront of this movement.
They are. And one of the most valuable features of Pharmanaut's system is its ability to provide early warnings of potential problems.
Oh, wow.
By detecting stress before visible symptoms appear, growers can intervene before an infestation becomes widespread and causes significant damage.
I can see how that would be crucial for organic growers who don't have the same chemical tools at their disposal. Early detection gives them a much better chance of getting ahead of those pesky mites.
Exactly. And that early intervention can often mean the difference between a minor setback and a major crop loss.
It makes you realize the importance of staying ahead of the curve when it comes to pest management. You can't just wait until you see the damage you need to be proactive and anticipate those challenges.
Absolutely. And that's particularly true in the face of climate change, which
Right.
is throwing another wrench into the equation for grape growers around the world.
That's a topic I definitely want to explore further.
Yeah.
We've talked about erinium mites and the challenges of organic management, but
Yeah.
how is climate change impacting vineyards, and what does that mean for the future of grape growing?
Well, climate change is a complex issue with far-reaching consequences, and the viticulture industry is certainly feeling its effects.
Yeah, for sure.
Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and extreme weather events are all creating new challenges for grape growers. And these challenges are intertwined with pest management in really complex ways.
Can you give us some specific examples of how climate change is impacting vineyards and how that's related to pests like erinium mites?
Certainly. One of the most noticeable impacts of climate change is the shifting of growing seasons.
Okay.
As temperatures warm, bud break, and harvest are happening earlier in many regions, this can disrupt traditional growing practices and require adjustments to vineyard management strategies. And it can also alter the life cycle of pests, potentially leading to more generations per year or shifts in their geographic range.
So the timing of everything is being thrown off.
Yeah.
And that includes the delicate balance between pests and their natural enemy.
Exactly. And that can have a ripple effect on everything from pest and disease pressure to fruit quality and yield. For example, if warmer temperatures lead to earlier bed break, it could also create a more favorable environment for erinium mites to thrive early in the season, potentially giving them a head start before their natural enemies have a chance to establish themselves.
I imagine water management is becoming even more critical in many regions as well, especially with droughts becoming more frequent and severe.
Absolutely. Droughts are a major concern, and they can definitely exacerbate pest problems. When vines are stressed due to lack of water, they're more susceptible to infestations. And unfortunately, erinium mites thrive in hot, dry conditions.
No.
So climate change is creating a perfect storm for these pests in many regions.
So it's a double whammy. Climate change is creating conditions that are more favorable for erinium mites, while also making the vines more vulnerable to their attacks.
Precisely. And it's not just about droughts. Extreme weather events like heat waves, floods, and hailstorms can also weaken vines and make them more susceptible to pests.
So climate change is adding a whole new layer of complexity to the already challenging task of managing erinium mites.
It is, and it's forcing grape growers to adapt their strategies and embrace new approaches to pest management.
I'm curious to learn more about those new approaches. What are researchers and innovators doing to help grape growers tackle these evolving challenges? And how does Pharmanaut fit into this picture?
You're right to be optimistic. There's a lot of exciting research and innovation happening in this area.
Good.
One promising avenue is the development of new grape varieties that are more resilient to drought, heat, and other climate-related stressors.
So it's about breeding grapes that can handle the heat, so to speak.
Sure.
But wouldn't that take years, even decades, to achieve?
It can be a lengthy process, but plant breeders are making progress.
Okay.
And it's not just about tolerance to extreme conditions. Researchers are also looking for varieties that can maintain fruit quality and yield under these changing conditions, because ultimately consumers still want delicious wine.
Of course, no one wants to sacrifice flavor for resilience. So are there any breakthroughs on the horizon in this area?
There are a few interesting developments. Some researchers are exploring the use of CRISPR technology to edit grapevine genes, potentially speeding up the process of developing resistant varieties. Others are looking to wild grape species, which often possess greater genetic diversity and may hold the key to traits like drought tolerance and pest resistance.
That's fascinating. It's like tapping into nature's own genetic library to find solutions to these modern-day challenges. But while we're waiting for those new grape varieties to become available, what can growers do right now to adapt to these changing conditions?
Another major area of focus is the development of more sustainable vineyard management practices.
Okay.
This includes things like water conservation, soil health improvement, and the use of renewable energy sources.
So it's about minimizing the environmental footprint of grape growing while also adapting to the changing climate.
Precisely. And there's a growing movement within the industry to embrace regenerative agriculture practices that go beyond sustainability to actually restore and enhance ecosystem health.
Wow.
This can involve techniques like cover cropping to improve soil fertility and water retention, reducing tillage to minimize soil disturbance, and incorporating livestock grazing to manage vegetation and build soil organic matter.
It sounds like a holistic approach, recognizing that a healthy vineyard is a resilient vineyard. But I imagine it requires a shift in mindset for many grape growers.
It does. It's about moving away from the traditional view of farming as a battle against nature and embracing a more collaborative approach, recognizing that a thriving ecosystem is essential for long-term success.
And how does technology, specifically Farminaut, play a role in this transition to more sustainable practices?
Farminaut's technology can be a powerful tool for helping growers make more informed decisions. For example, their satellite imagery can be used to assess water stress across the vineyard, allowing growers to target irrigation more precisely and conserve this precious resource.
So instead of irrigating the entire vineyard uniformly, they can focus on the areas that need it most.
Exactly. And that not only saves water, but can also reduce the risk of overwatering, which can lead to other problems like root diseases.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And I imagine Farminaut's AI-powered advisory system, Javen, can also provide guidance on other aspects of sustainable vineyard management.
Absolutely. Jeevan can analyze data on soil health, weather patterns, and pest pressure to provide recommendations on things like fertilization, cover cropping, and even the timing of vineyard operations to minimize environmental impact.
So it's like having a virtual sustainability consultant at your fingertips.
That's a great way to put it. And as climate change continues to reshape the landscape of grape-growing tools like Farminaut will become even more essential for navigating those challenges and ensuring a thriving future for the industry.
It's encouraging to hear about all these innovations and the dedication of those working to find solutions. It gives me hope that we can find ways to adapt and continue to enjoy the fruits of the vine for generations to come.
Me too. And I think it's important to remember that we as consumers also have a role to play. By supporting wineries that are committed to sustainable practices and exploring wines from diverse regions, we can help shape a more resilient and delicious future for the world of wine.
That's a great point. So the next time we raise a glass, let's take a moment to appreciate not just the flavor, but also the journey those grapes have taken, the challenges they've overcome, and the people who have dedicated their lives to cultivating this ancient and beloved beverage.
Cheers to that.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of grape growing. We hope you've gained a new appreciation for the intricate web of challenges and solutions that are shaping the future of this fascinating industry.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious.